You know why you're here. Go watch part 1 if you haven't already. Let's just get straight into this. I really like Spider-Man. I think most people do. And even more so than characters like Spawn, Captain America, Samus Aran, and Doomslayer, I think Peter Parker is the most overdue returner for the show. So who's his best option? There's Ladybug, which is not my thing from what I've seen, but I get the idea. There's Blue Beetle, who feels like a Spite matchup, and my personal preferred for Spidey, himself. The Spidey Battle Royale has been a popular request for years now, and now that No Way Home exists, there's even more reason to do it. So long as they don't just scale the mods to each other, because that would be really boring. The only way I can see this working is through a simulation, since them all killing each other would not work naturally. As for who wins, I'm hearing Tom Holland is the likely victor here, which is good for me since I was one of the thousands who had a teenage crush on him, but also disappointing since my personal favourite is Andrew Garfield's. Although I think both of his films are both 6 out of 10s. I don't really have any idea on how the fight choreography could go here. I'd honestly say in the wrong hands, this could be one of the weaker episodes of its season. In that case, I'd rather they just bring back Comic Book Peter. I think if anything, this should be done just to show that Battle Royales are something they're still interested in, since it's been 5 years since the last one, and no, I'm not counting the boys Battle Royale. One episode I'm shocked was as controversial as it became was Frieza vs Megatron. I'll admit the connections there aren't great, and I don't really think it understands who Megatron is, but I've always seen it as that being the point since it's a contrast matchup. Anyways, despite how awesome of an episode I think it became, controversial research aside, I think that Megatron and Transformers deserve an episode that actually understands the character. So who am I putting forward? Vilgax. The battle of intergalactic cybernetic conquerors who were seen as criminals on their home worlds who actually only wanted to conquer the planet because they deemed it as the best thing for it. Genuinely caring for its growth and prosperity whilst killing as many people and races as they need to do so. It works a lot better than Frieza vs Megatron. I don't know if this would make for a cool animation though, since with how good that episode ended up being, I don't know if there's anything more that can be done with Megatron, since the scale they went to, according to Transformers fans, was way above Megatron's usual capabilities, despite the fact he's a Universal Plus threat. But let's not talk about that. So yeah, above all else, I want this just to silence the outcry Megatron fans had last year. I'm a people pleaser, I suppose. After season 10, cartoon matchups are finally starting to become more prevalent. Thank God. It feels like the crew are finally learning what makes for a banger season lineup. So naturally, I have a couple like Vilgax vs Megatron that I'd like to see. Thus, I'd like to present to you Lightning vs Thomas. Peak fiction for real. You may say this wouldn't work as a death battle, and I say to you that your favourite episode of season 9 is likely SpongeBob vs Aquaman. So who's the hypocrite here? This is one of those matchups like Scooby vs Courage where the analysis has potential to be the best of its season, especially in Thomas's case, and definitely if you composite them both. You can virtually do whatever you want in the animation so long as you stick to their canon selves and don't sprinkle in too many memes. These characters still have fans and it is important to respect that fact. As someone who grew up as a toddler watching Thomas the Tank Engine and who watched Cars 1 on repeat a lot as a kid, my inner child would scream if this was ever announced. And I know we have the death race, but that isn't my thing, I'll be honest. And after Scooby vs Courage, there's no excuse as to why this wouldn't work. We've had Halloween episodes every year since season 6 now, so I think we're long overdue for a Christmas episode by now. Of course, there's only one real candidate here, let's be real. The Grinch vs Jack Skellington. It's such an obvious matchup, I'm surprised it's only just gotten popular. Both wish to ruin Christmas, either out of spite or wanting to do it better, and disguise themselves as Santa along with their dog to steal everyone's presents, with both of them eventually being humbled and learning the true meaning of the holidays. Hell, the connections provide us with the setup right there. Jack comes to Whoville to steal Christmas at the same time as the Grinch. Unfortunately, this means both will still be villains, but I think that makes it more fun, since both could interact with the environment in many fun ways. Plus, I'd love to see what the team can cook up with a Christmas environment, assuming this would be in sprites and not in hand-drawn, that is. I hate Jack's stomps, which is base since I grew up with the Nightmare Before Christmas film being a huge part of my childhood. That and the cute Mario Bros series being one of my favourites as a kid, with Jack being one of the main characters there. Sadly, this won't be happening until at least Season 12, but with it being a part of the Tournament of Champions, I'm happy that it at least has a shot now. Honestly, if any matchup out of the 100 here, quote unquote, has to happen before the show ends, it's this one. Master Chief versus Samus Aran. In case you don't know the significance of this matchup, the late Monty Owen made a video called Haloid, which was a versus animation between the two. So why is this important? It's literally inspired the whole show, alongside Deadliest Warrior, that is. I know Ruby vs Market is going to happen, since that was the promise made to Monty before his passing, but I think this one equally deserves a shot at happening. Sure, the connections and the debate aren't anything special, but it's still a better matchup and debate than Chief vs Doomslayer 2, as popular as that request is. Honestly, I'd feel kinda iffy if the show ended and we didn't have this, because honestly, I could care less about the matchup itself. I'm just a firm believer in respecting your roots and your teachers. The art of punching has been perfected and practiced for centuries. Why do I bring this up? Because Chris Redfield and Curtis Stryker are up next. The Boulder Puncher versus the Melina Puncher. Two former cops placed in unlikely circumstances when their worlds come under threat by undead and supernatural armies. I'll admit I've never played a Resident Evil game before, only experiencing it through Marvel vs Capcom and Dead by Daylight. Stryker, on the other hand, has always been one of my favourite MK characters since I first played him in MK9. I'm aware that's a bit of a hot take. He literally puts the mortal in Mortal Kombat. What more could you ask for? This fight works quite well thematically too, since both have also turned to the dark side in some way, shape or form. I'd expect Stryker to take this, which doesn't feel right, but I'm not complaining about it. So long as there's a scene of 1, them fighting a horde of Tarkat and the zombies together, and 2, them punching each other in the face at the same time. Seriously, screw Liu Kang, Melina, and Katana, bring Stryker in next. I love Overwatch. I also love fighting games. What happens when you smush them together? Quite a decent amount of matchups, but for now, I want to talk about Dhalsim vs Zenyatta, the battle of pacifist monks known for their wisdom and guidance. It's a simple matchup, but man does it work. Unfortunately, it is a stomp since every important Street Fighter character now scales to E Honda, which is really boring to be honest, but I don't entirely disagree with it. This would obviously start as a spar of some kind, perhaps Dhalsim venturing to Nepal in order to see what Zenyatta's culture is about, with them both giving wisdom to each other whilst teaching each other new tricks and lessons. Hell, at the end you could have Zenyatta's programming be put into something else somehow, just to show that Dhalsim didn't intend on killing his body. Plus I think Werewolf would make a really beautiful sounding track for this, as well as the visuals being some of the best we've gotten. I don't expect this one to ever happen, but hopefully the crew's love for Street Fighter will be enough for this to get considered one day. In my Season 11 prediction video, please go check it out, I mentioned that I think we have a high chance of getting a Mark Grayson matchup this season, and I still stand by that. Sadly, Gohan and Nova are the likely candidates, which sucks for me because I really couldn't care less about either. If you watched that video, you know that my preferred for Mark is Luke Skywalker. This works so well. Again, see the pinned comment for the full list of connections, but these two are very similar, just with a few contrasts setting them apart. The debate is actually a full debate, and the dialogue potential is very high. Plus, the track could be really fun. The only issue I see here is what actually happens during the fight. Since Viltrumites kinda suck in terms of versatility, I'd love a scene where Luke clings onto Mark whilst flying and it turns into a semi-air battle. I know that'll be easier with Nova or Gohan, but please no. So earlier I mentioned the Street Fighter vs Overwatch matchup, and now I'm gonna mention another. Roadhog vs Birdie has always been a favourite of mine. A battle between two fat, greedy, money-hungry criminals who weaponize chains as their primary form of attack. Since Birdie has been semi-redeemed as a bodyguard for Karen Kanzuki and the Kanzuki clan, I can see this starting as a heist where Roadhog and Junkrat try to infiltrate the base. Whilst Junkrat sneaks in, Roadhog has to deal with Birdie. Since one is very loud and the other very quiet, this has some very funny interaction potential. Since the Kanzuki household has lots of ninja-based equipment and set pieces, there's plenty of potential for them to just goof around in the environment, which is honestly perfect for these two. Hell, include a scene of Birdie wolfing down some food whilst they're at it, maybe allowing Roadhog to reflect upon himself and seeing how disgusting he kind of is. In terms of a debate, I don't actually think Birdie scales to Honda since he's kind of a jobber, although I doubt this helps Roadhog's case much, which sucks since he's my most played Overwatch character at nearly 100 hours at the time of writing this, and I played my fair share of Birdie during the shitty launch of SF5. Again, you can't go wrong with doing more episodes involving both of these franchises, separate the communities from the characters. My favourite show of all time is Gravity Falls, and Bill vs Discord was potentially one of the best episodes we've ever gotten. I didn't have too much investment in any other matchups involving the series. Well, that is until I found this one. Stanley Pimes vs Jim Hopper. Men who live in a small town in a shack that help to solve supernatural mysteries. They have rough exteriors but are kind and grow to love a group of kids as if they were their own, and eventually sacrifice themselves to stop a supernatural threat because of these kids, eventually coming back to their families. It's also a cop versus a criminal, so the setup is already right there. Stan as a character offers so much potential for interactions, and the Mystery Shack offers a bunch of creative potential to show off Stan's trickery and Hopper's smarts. I just think both of these shows would be neat to see on the show, especially since Stan offers much different stats than Bill, for obvious reasons of course. Plus, don't lie, you know Werewolf can cook with this one. And there's part 2 done. I'll be real with you and say I was kind of sick and hungover whilst recording this, so regardless, I hope you all enjoyed. And be sure to let me know if any of these 10 matchups have appealed to you. Be sure to like and subscribe, and as always, be excellent to each other.